I mean,
Yeah, welcome to a Monday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. And Bill, I have great news for you. Do you want to hear
hit
the
me.
great news? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
For your many years of loyal service, CBS Sports has commissioned a statue of you.
Oh, no.
To use the same sculptor that did the D Wade thing. I think it's going to be great.
That poor sculptor will never work again. The best thing that I saw online is that they turned D Wade into Voldemort. I mean,
Somebody said that he looks like one of the zombies from I Am Legend.
oh,
Look at this thing. So when they unveiled this, the really funny part was, poor D Wade, he gets up there and he's like, oh man, who is that guy? And he was kind of trying to laugh it off, but that was their version of the Iverson debacle, statue debacle. But at least that one was just small.
right,
This
little.
doesn't look anything like him.
I don't know how much a statue costs. I'm sure it's hundreds of thousands. You have to redo it. That cannot be the statue. So I covered Wade. You don't have to cover Wade to know this is true. Like, Wade is a really good looking, charming dude. That statue is grotesque. I mean, I don't know what else to say. That's not.
So my whole thing is like you're gonna commission the statue, right? And like it's got to go through a bunch of. It doesn't just materialize overnight, right? I mean,
it's a great question.
It's a big project.
Yes,
many people clearly had to be involved in this, and evidently many people were either like, "Yep, that's the one," or just didn't say anything
right when it showed up. I think it. So is there a meeting today where the owner or maybe Pat Riley has a meeting with whoever the last line of defense was and says, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you show us when it got it here in the crate?
You have to
What are you doing?
You have to stop payment on that check.
Right. Cancel payment.
It was so, I mean, like poor D Wade, because he is obviously one of, or probably the biggest player in franchise history.
I think he is the guy now.
The guy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
But they commission a statue of you and they have a big day and you're like, this is really cool. I'm the guy. Thank you for this. And then they drop the cloth and you're like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
It was that guy?
The look on his face too I think he actually was seeing it. I've seen some people suggest that he'd already seen it. I know that was the first time he'd seen it. Because he looked horrible.
They have to do it.
Have to
Right?
redo it.
I mean, I know that it costs a lot of money, but Mickey Harrison is an incredibly rich. The owner of the Heat is incredibly rich. I mean, incredibly wealthy. One of the wealthiest people in America. He has to just pony up for that.
Yeah. Every time that any of our viewers or listeners are on a cruise, there's a good chance you're funding his lifestyle. He's got the money. You have to redo it.
You got to redo it.
It's horrific looking. It's not like, it doesn't really look like him, but it looks like the New York Knicks commissioned it. This is what the statue would like if the Knicks did it.
If you're not watching on YouTube, go to our YouTube page to check this out because we've got it up on the video right now, and it is actually. You know what? I've come around. Don't redo it. Don't redo it. Leave it because it's so bad. It's so bad. It's good, and it makes for a fun story. If I was D Wade, I would insist on them keeping it. And anyway, I'm excited to see the one that we commissioned for you. All right, later in the show, we're going to discuss the Bucks and the Nuggets. They've got some issues, Bill. I know it's early, but not looking great. And then Steve Kerr and the Warriors' wacky rotations. We'll get into that in addition to Steph Curry's ankles continue to be not great. But first, pretty good return so far for the Los Angeles Lakers. 3-0, Bill, beat the Wolves on opening night, beat the Suns on Friday. They're playing the Suns again tonight in Phoenix. And then they beat the Kings on Saturday. Watch that one. That was a pretty good game. LeBron was in both of the back-to-backs, as was AD. And Anthony Davis, Bill, JJ Redick said this to start the season before, going into the season. He was like, we want to play through AD. I've heard a lot of coaches say that previously. Tough to do on a team that still has LeBron, but they're doing it so far, and he's looked amazing.
Look, it's early returns, and let's do the old asterisk. It's been not even a handful of games. JJ looks amazing, and as the head coach and what he's doing. And to your point, if Anthony Davis can be as top 5 underselling what he's doing, I think it is. I mean, if he can be an MVP level player, if they can get the best out of Anthony Davis, if LeBron actually doesn't have to be the best player on the floor, although he's going to, I'm sure you saw, LeBron's going to play 82 games, little shot at Embiid. I enjoyed it. Just like a little shot at Joel.
A little
yeah. So I was obviously highly skeptical that the Lakers were going to be particularly good this year. I had them outside of the plan in our predictions. Those are worth what you pay for them, nothing. And we sort of all knew that there was going to be a few games maybe separating several teams, but they don't look like a playing team. They look like a top 6 playoff team right now. They look legit. So verdict's out. Let's see. But I think for me, John, the big question mark was, is JJ Redick a genius? Is he an arrogant buffoon when it comes to being a coach, right? Not in life. You were pretty high on him. You know him. I don't. You've been around him in your Philly days. It's early days, but the way the offensive running, how much better it is than under last year's coach. To your point, how good Anthony Davis looks. And again, I went to one game, but the vibe was really kind of right. The vibe was good, and people in the Lakers organization will tell you that there's just a much happier sort of sense of confidence and camaraderie and teamwork and confidence in their coach. Yeah, man, things are looking up for the Lakers.
What they're getting out of Anthony Davis is last year's Anthony Davis crossed with this summer's Olympic Anthony Davis. He's been very aggressive. That's always been a knock against him, that, maybe he's not as physical and aggressive as he needs to be. He's gone to the line a ton. To your point about JJ, I didn't know if this was the right job for him, and I didn't know whether or not it would work out for him as a coach. And it might not still. It's only been 3 games, right? I do know, though, that he's a smart guy. There's a mind at work there. Now, that might not necessarily translate to the Lakers actually achieving anything. I had them at the top end of the play-in, somewhere in that 7-8 range. Maybe they overachieve and do slightly better than that. But I just like the idea of somebody smart who's thought about this on the sideline, and then we'll go from there, because they have, for all intents and purposes, the same personnel as last year, plus Dalton Connect. And, Max Christie is healthy, and Gabe Vincent's
healthy.
Yeah. And that helps. That definitely helps. But that bench is not exactly like gangbusters. And eventually they'll get Vanderbilt back. I still think they have a math problem here, Bill, because, you see the Boston Celtics jacking up a league high, like 51 threes a game, which is on average, like absolutely ridiculous. And JJ said, that's the way we want to play. We want to shoot 53s per game this year. And we all kind of laugh because they don't have the personnel for it. They're averaging about 30 threes per game, and that's not nearly enough. And I just wonder where they're going to get that extra offense when they're going to need it eventually.
I mean, I think right. Well, I don't think it's coming, but they don't have the personnel to do what you're describing in Boston. But if Anthony Davis is going to play at an MVP level and be offensively really dynamic and really aggressive, and they're going to get the best version of him, maybe it closes some of the gap. But we're not talking a 1-3 team, but maybe we're talking a 5-8, a team that can actually be in the top. Again, I keep saying the same thing. It's really, really early. Here's the other thing that was put to me by somebody, might have been producer Aaron, I can't even remember. And that is like, do you think, and I'll ask you, do you think there's a world where all the hoopla about Bronny and all this sort of like Bronny in game 1, Anthony Davis thought, okay, that's fine, but I'm actually going to go out there and be the face of this team, and I don't have to there's not the pressure, there's not the same focal point, but I actually am going to carry this team while this circus is going on with my buddy's kid.
Yeah, I think that, while all that is swirling, he can just do his job and be really good at basketball, right? I mean, like, he's not numb to that stuff. I mean, he knows that it's going to happen, but it almost, not to say that it provides cover for him, because he's always been a good player. I mean, he made all NBA last year, right? Which is something that I kept. Yeah, that was my whole focus for the Lakers. Two guys, right? And those 2 guys are really good, but the one guy has his son to deal with. So the other guy is just like, I'm going to go play basketball and be really good at it. You mentioned something that I thought was interesting there. AD at an MVP level, like nobody was talking about that preseason. Right now, I mean, again, 3 games, whatever, but he's certainly playing at that level right now that you'd have to be like, if the Lakers end up as a 4-5 seed and way overachieve, and AD plays like the AD of all NBA level / all defense level / the AD that we saw in the Olympics.
He's talented enough to be an MVP, even with that. And then the other thing is we've all been sort of preparing for and talking about what would happen when LeBron was the second best player on a team. And I'll speak for myself. I thought that was going to, or the second most important, I thought that was going to happen when he really trailed off. But if it happens because AD just takes a major step and LeBron is still playing more or less the level that he did last year, I mean, that's a pretty significant sort of interesting question too. Is like, what does it look like when you've got LeBron playing at a pretty high level, whatever his age, and he's the second best player on the team.
There's a case to be made that AD was their best player in the bubble chip, right? I mean,
yes.
So, I mean, maybe that was the formula that they just kind of like needed to go with anyway.
I mean, the knock was, or not the knock, but like the thought was, and I shared it, but a bunch of folks is okay. AD was that guy, but he also got a bunch of months off because obviously COVID shut the world down. So when we got to the bubble, he was rested, he was recuperated. The thought being AD's body just can't handle 82 games, however many he plays, then a 2-month playoff run to the finals. But if it can, right, if he can be that guy in a full season, then yes, because we've seen it. I just don't know that it speaks to the reality of how many games you actually are supposed to play to win an NBA championship. You're supposed to play between now and the end of June, basically.
Yeah, I don't doubt his talent at all. To the extent that I'm concerned, I would have any concern or do any concern trolling over AD. It would be that. It would just be about how durable he was durable last year.
Yes, he was
great, totally available.
Yep.
Had one of his best seasons in recent memory. As I mentioned, makes all NBA and all defense, and then goes to the Olympics and wins a gold medal. That's a lot of mileage. I just want to see him make it through the season because, like I said, we're going to talk about Steph Curry later on. And it's just like these guys who are getting a little bit older and have a lot of wear and tear. I just want to see them out there and healthy.
Here's my crazy case for Anthony Davis MVP, which I didn't even think I was going to.
Okay, hit me.
So, I know we're going to hit this later, but if Milwaukee's, it's early, I got it. If Milwaukee's a hot damn mess and makes it hard for Giannis to be in that mix, if Denver takes a couple steps back, right, even though the 4 seed, I think especially with how many he's won, it makes it hard for Jokic to win that award. Embiid's already announced basically he's not going to play enough games. So the big 3 in competition, there's other guys you can put out there. I think Shea is the main person you're competing with. But if the Lakers vastly overperform expectations, they finished 4th or 5th, and Anthony Davis has a career year, and he's an all defensive level player, defensive player of the year level guy, which he is when he plays. I don't know. That's an interesting dark horse for me to keep an eye on.
All of that is true, and then also they've been enjoyable to watch, which hasn't always been the case. So I'm really looking forward to this evening's second game against the Suns in Phoenix. Before we move on, today is G League Camp Opens Day, which might also signal sayonara Bronny James. So we're going to bring in producer Aaron here, who has a question for us on Bronny.
Yeah, it's generally not a topic that has a lot of nuance, but maybe you could call this a conspiracy theory. But I have something I want to run by you guys. Bill, you earlier in the show talked about how good the vibes were around the Lakers. Insofar as that is, whatever portion of that is coming from JJ Redick, whatever portion of that is coming from perhaps having Bronny around, making practices more fun, which they definitely are, and making LeBron more engaged. Do you guys think it is worth it to have Bronny around the team more? Obviously, it's not great for him, right? He needs to go to the G League to play. For his career, it's better for him to be in the G League. But it may be better for the Lakers for him to be on the Lakers just because of what it does for the vibes and for keeping LeBron engaged.
So can I start this off, John? My answer is I have a short answer and a long answer.
Okay.
The short answer is no. It is not worth it. Absolutely not.
Okay.
You let Bronny, but there's a pattern. There's a thing you can do with G League players that Sam Presti really perfected a long time ago, where he would have his young guys basically be on the G League, and every moment that they could come up for a practice, and just like with the Lakers, Oklahoma City had moved their then whatever it was called, their G League team from I think Tulsa to nearby, so they could come up, go down, come up, go down. Right? You can sort of do both. And does Bronny need to travel on the plane? No. But home games, he can sit on the bench and be there. He can be at practices. You can work around a G League schedule. So I would bring, and they're going to, I'd bring Bronny around the actual NBA team as much as possible. But and we've hit this, John. Bronny's not good enough. Most people think he's not good enough. He can be good enough, maybe, but he's got to be playing and gaining confidence in the G League. Not even I. Every GM you talk to, every scout you talk to, who is honest about this, he's got to be in the G League for his own sake as much as possible.
I mean, as we mentioned, JJ's really kind of set his rotation for the bench here. He's going 9 deep with Jackson Hayes, Gabe Vincent, Christie, and then Dalton Connect. So Bronny's not going to factor into that. So just from like a player perspective, for a guy who clearly isn't good enough to play, he does need to go to the G League and work on his game and get as many reps as he can. Because even then, it's going to be a tall order for him. Now, that said, I don't know that that's going to fix it, because it's not like, unless he grows, 4 or 5 inches and
That's
puts
exactly
on
right.
30 pounds. I don't know that he's ever going to be an NBA player, at which point Aaron's question is kind of like, do you just keep him around as like a team mascot, like a good
Yeah.
vibes guy?
I also don't know if I buy the premise. I think LeBron would sell that premise. Like I buy the idea that LeBron being happy is really significant, and having covered LeBron, like his mood is really important and it shifts significantly, sometimes week to week, day to day, certainly season to season. So yeah, you want to keep him happy, but what else does he want? You drafted his kid, his kid's there. And to your point about him struggling, I think I brought this up last week, but I wrote a column for Bronny's debut, and I talked to a bunch of people, and one former GM who had scouted him in person told me that he's going to struggle in the G League. Like that was his. So
I don't think that that's unreasonable, but also like the idea of keeping him around for vibes as like kind of a team mascot, like totem, is so sad for that kid.
Sad.
Like go to the, you know what? It's good for us because we get to talk about this, and he's a topic of conversation and whatever. If I was Bronny, disappear me, send me to the South Bay Lakers where I can just play and not have to deal with this, because none of this attention for him so far has been good.
I agree. 2 questions for you, because I've never been to a G League game as like a reporter who's going to write a story. How many of us do you think will be at I'm going to go. Will be at Bronny's G League debut?
Oh, there's going to be, you know what? You're right. I'm talking about go disappear in the South Bay Lakers. That's not going to happen either. I mean, there'll be media there to ask him questions. And now how many will be there after game 2,
after game
5,
right.
10?
Yeah, that's what it is. But, so he needs time for all of us to get bored and move on.
Yeah. Godspeed, Bronny James. Off to the G League you go. We're going to take a quick break, and then on the other side, we're going to talk about a couple of teams that have not fared well so far, the Nuggets and the Bucks. That's coming up. You're listening to Beyond the Arc.
It's a team almost too good to be true.
You guys ain't ready for us.
Kick your game day off right as the Tops team tackles all the biggest headlines around the league.
Who's got 2 thumbs and loves this next segment?
Sunday mornings on CBS Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. John Gonzalez and Bill Ryder on a Monday. You can find us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, and leave a review. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave us a comment now on this episode. Just look below the play button on the Spotify app when you're in full screen mode, and you can tell us what you think of the show or leave us a question. All right, Nuggets, Bill. All of this is couching. We keep couching early. However, Nuggets 0-2, and I'm concerned here for a couple of reasons. So they lose at home to the Thunder by 25. That one, Joker has a triple-double. It's a first game out. The Thunder are absolutely loaded. They're trying to figure out what they are. Okay, fine. You could almost explain that one away, even though they lost by 25 and they got their doors blown off. The one where they lose to the Clips by 5 on Saturday is the one where I was like, uh-oh. So Joker had I don't know if you watched that. I watched that whole thing. Joker
I watched a lot of it.
41, 9, and 4. He had 2 steals and a block.
Yeah.
Bill, he had a career high 7 threes. That dude was everywhere. Now, under normal circumstances, when Joker has a game like that, we saw one in the Olympics where he was like taking on Team USA's entire 12-man roster by himself against the Serbian team that had some other dudes. You're like, okay, he's superhuman. He could do this by himself. He didn't. And that's where you go, oh, man, right. Yeah, this rotation is a little wonky. The bench is super thin and not good.
Russ is awful.
Russ has been awful. Horrendous.
Awful. And by the way, I watched that game because, as you may know, I went to the Clippers opener last week and wrote a game they almost won. Basically wrote the Clippers are garbage and trash. And now they're, what are they, 2-1? And they beat. So I was just like, Denver, come on, man. Because I'm getting a lot of feedback from Clippers. I didn't know there were Clippers fans. They're out there. I thought there were 7 of them. There's like 700.
And you know what? Like I was last night when I was watching their game, they were talking about how they're just like a kind of a plucky team. They give a lot of effort. Obviously no Kawhi, low expectations, but they've really been battling so far. The Clippers,
they did. They have.
And it's like, that's kind of, in the seasons like that last Doc season where Tobias Harris was his main guy and Lou Williams was still out there, and they were just like a professional basketball team. That's kind of like, that's where the Clippers should be.
I'm not going to equate this to Doc Rivers because I think I have a different view, but I should remember they have a great coach. They have an outstanding coach in Ty Lue, and that does create a level of professionalism. And here's the thing, though. I think the Clippers are going to – I think things are going to regress to the mean, and you're going to see a lot more nights like you saw from James Harden night one where he was, 7 of 29 or whatever the hell he was, and they're going to lose a bunch of games. And I think the takeaway from Denver for me, John, is not that they're in dire trouble as much as they're not going to be maybe one of the dominant 2 or 3 teams in the West potentially like we thought, because the flaws that we were worried about are clear from Jump Street. And to your point, the sort of those of us, and I was one of them, that thought Denver would be, second or third, regardless of that, because Joker can carry these guys. I think that game was a reminder that even when he tries to carry a team and he tries to single-handedly win a regular season game, early in the regular season, he might have done it in the Olympics, but you can't do it every night in the NBA, and you certainly aren't going to be able to do it 48 times or whatever the number is. And so it's, in the playoffs, maybe it's their danger level is different, and it's, again, early, but yeah, there's a world for me where we look back and they're 4th or 5th in the West, and that's mostly because of Joker. And I think I overestimated his ability to carry what is a poorly constructed basketball team, especially if his sidekicks, his supposed co-stars, continue not to play at that level, in Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr.
Yeah, the sidekicks are a problem, right? But then the rotation gets real thin real fast. I mean, we talked about what would happen with KCP leaving and Christian Brown going into the starting lineup. Brown's actually been not bad. Like he
looks okay, actually. Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah, he's fine. He's not the problem right now. What I would be more concerned about is MPJ has not looked nearly as good as they're going to need him to look. He's going to have to play considerably better. They need They need so much more out of him if this team is going to do anything. And the same with Jamal Murray. And then after that, you get to the bench and you go, oh no, because their whole thing was, Calvin Booth was talking about like, all right, once KCP leaves, we've identified our replacements. Christian Brown's going to go in the starting lineup, and Julian Strother and Peyton Watson, they're going to be our new guys. So far, they're not your guys. And then on top of that, you bring in Russell Westbrook, and you're like, all right, we need Russell Westbrook to play under control, to really marshal that second unit. He's going to shoot some threes. That's going to help us out with the bench minutes. So far, Bill, he's 2 for 18.
Right, he can't shoot.
And 1 from 9 from 3. He is minus 37 in 40 minutes.
Here, let me pile on another dilemma that I know we've hit before, but we had conversations last season sort of foreseeing maybe this possibility of the CBA and the way that they're going to be built, the way they are built. All right, do you trade Michael Porter Jr. to get some depth, right? But that was under the presumption that MPJ would command something because he would play particularly well. What do you do if Michael Porter Jr. continues to look like a false promise rather than someone who's going to grow into that contract, and you can't even move him? I mean, it's one thing to have the dilemma, oh man, MPJ is not quite the level, but he's pretty good, and he shows flashes of being one of the best shooters in the NBA, and he's obviously super tall, and there are some things, there's a ceiling there, and the hard decision, do we move him and bring in some like lesser pieces that add up to more depth? But the Michael Porter Jr. that we've seen this year and that we've seen, I think, at critical stretches in the playoffs, even the time they won a couple years ago, is there even a market for him that makes that quandary realistic?
That's a great point. That's a great point. I wonder what MPJ's market is, because Aaron Gordon is sort of like, he's a good defender and he's a glue guy. And that 2-man game that he runs where Joker gets into the paint and forces the defense to like that really difficult choice of either you're going to collapse on me and I'm going to toss that lob to Aaron Gordon, or you're not, and I'm going to score on you. I like that component of their game in the same way that even though Jamal Murray hasn't played, as well as you would want Jamal Murray to play, that 2-man game with Jamal Murray as well. I don't know I don't look at MPJ and go, oh, this is the value that he consistently provides for this team, because he's not scoring enough. Number one, he's not shooting the 3 at a high enough clip. Right. And he's not that great a defender either. So I don't look at MPJ and go, ooh, yeah, like gotta hold on to that dude. So if there was somebody out there that you could move him for, or someone's, I'd be fine with unplugging him. I just, as this team is currently constituted, one, as I mentioned, the bench is a serious issue. As you mentioned, the sidekicks haven't been good. Here's the other problem, the math problem. It was a problem last year, right? They were last in the NBA in 3-pointers attempted. This year, the good news is they're not last. They're taking 36.5 threes per game. So that puts them in like the top third. That's better, right? Bad news is they're in the bottom third of actually making them. Joker made 7 the other night, and they're still not a great 3-point shooting team. And I don't know how that changes.
This is the inverse of the Doc Rivers teams when it was in Philly and with the Clippers. his teams actually were often in the top 12, sometimes the top 8 in 3-point shooting percentage, and we're always in the bottom 5 or 6 in the number of threes that he took. At least Denver's. So here's it. Like, is there a world where Jamal Murray kind of figures it out, where MPJ figures it out, and where someone pulls Russ aside and says, by the way, I want to say the F word. Last week, I was watching you and Sam, and you dropped an F-bomb.
I put it back in. I put it back in.
John after dark.
It was coming out, and I
CBS Sports. I was on the couch, chilling, right, like leaning back, and I go, "Oh, nice." You got. So anyway, we're somewhere. To quote you, I'm not going to say it. Where someone says, "Hey, Russ, great work. Stop shooting 3-point shots, dude. Stop doing." But that's not helping.
Well, but it doesn't help if they don't. Like,
no, somebody else needs to shoot him.
This is bad both ways. Well, it's okay. So, like, is Julian Strother your answer? Is Peyton Watson your answer? Like, there's no answer there on the bench.
The thing is, the answer is not on the roster to the degree that they need. I don't think. And I know, and producer Aaron is sort of in the chat saying you can't move on from MPJ because they're not scoring with him and they need his 3-point shooting. But I'm saying if you could get a market, I don't think there is. Maybe, to quote a baseball GM, maybe you try to like recreate what MPJ was supposed to be in the aggregate, right? You add some depth. And, I don't know. There's a solution. I don't know. Like, the solution is Joker needs to score 55 points. He needs to be a 50, 20, 12 guy every single game and just carry the Nuggets at this rate.
Good news if you're the Nugs. You're on a little bit of they have a 3-game road trip starting tonight. They're in Toronto. Toronto's quickly is probably not going to play. He's doubtful. RJ Barrett is questionable. So already not good Toronto team followed by a very not good Brooklyn Nets team.
Well,
the Nets
just won a big game.
I know, and we're going to get into that on the other side. And then they're at Minnesota, which is a little bit tougher. But I mean, at least you get 2 games against 2 teams that you should beat, and you go into Minnesota 2-2. You think, in theory, but yes, not encouraging start for the Nuggets. We're gonna take another break, and then on the other side, we're gonna talk about the team that just beat or just lost to the Brooklyn Nets. Also, not a great start. Your Doc Rivers, Milwaukee Bucks, coming up on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc.
Today, with the support of the NFL, a new playbook is being written. The National Gay Flag Football League provides inclusive play for over 4,000 LGBTQ plus players and allies. Here is a home with no penalty for being you.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc.
Can I just say, what a beautiful week it's been. My Barcelona football club, I'm going to wear their shirts every day, beat Bayern and beat Real Madrid. And now we get to have this Doc Rivers conversation that I am here for.
Oh, man.
I'm here for it, dude.
If the Nuggets are in trouble, I think the Bucks are in, like, I actually think the Nuggets will be fine. If I had to pick one, the Bucks, though, have serious issues. So they're 1-2 now, Bill. And they lost to the Bulls at home, and then they lost to the Nets on Sunday at the Nets. And all the questions that we had about this team going in, and all the questions that we had about them last year, remain true. They look old and slow, and their perimeter defense issues are rearing their ugly head. The Bulls and the Nets guards absolutely cooked them. They bring in Gary Trent kind of like to patch that over a little bit, and that's not nearly enough.
No.
I mean, look, Zach LaVine, Kobe White, Josh Giddey, Cam Thomas.
I mean, Zach LaVine looked good, though. But, yeah.
Just running these dudes off the floor.
You said the thing that I think is the most troubling, because they look old. And that is hard to fix, right? That is not a tactical adjustment. I for those that don't know, I am not a Doc Rivers guy. I don't love Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers doesn't love me. I think he's one of the most overrated coaches in the NBA. And if things are harder if the factors and variables they have there are less effective than we thought, if they're not as good as we thought, if they're a little older than we thought, I don't trust Doc Rivers to be able to solve that problem. So I make the rounds as my role as the NBA insider here. I sort of like try to, you know how this goes, John. I'm trying to set up calls with GMs and high executives, but they're busy. So I sort of set them up in waves, and I set up windows. And I just happened to talk to some folks with the Bucks over the weekend, and things weren't quite as dire yet. I think I got one of the people on Friday, but there was definitely sort of a note of, again, you're sort of reading it into stuff because no one gets on the phone with me, and I've got good relationships with that organization. Says, yeah, man, we're bleeped. but there was like a worry and a stress. And I asked about the Sam Amick, who's an excellent reporter for where's Sam, The Athletic, like every other sports writer in America, who got Giannis to basically say, like, I could be traded if he put Giannis under the guys before the season started. If I could be traded, I could be shipped out if things don't go well, which I think is, and so does the people in Milwaukee, is his way of really saying, I could demand a trade if things don't go well. He doesn't think that they're going to come to him. John Horst, the GM's not going to Giannis in February and saying, shit, stuff's really gone bad, bro. We got to move you out. It's the other way around. But I think that pressure is real. And I think like the bad start we're going to talk about because this is what we do. But in a lot of cases like Denver and other, there's not real pressure to worry at 0-2 or 1-2 or 2-3 or 4-5. This reminds me to a degree of Miami that I covered in 2010, where if things continue to start badly for Milwaukee, John, I think the Giannis pressure is massive and is real, and it mounts and it affects Doc Rivers. And they're paying, I think, 4 head coaches right now, including Doc. It's not like you can move on from Doc, and Middleton's not even playing, and he's looked old. And I mean, I like Dame, but he did not have a good night against the Nets, and it's just things could unravel very quickly.
They could unravel very quickly. I was thinking the other day, man, they really need Chris Middleton back. And then I caught myself and I went, is that going to do much? Is that enough? I don't know that it's enough here because it certainly doesn't solve your perimeter defense issues. I mean, quick, speedy guards are going to give them problems all season long. I mean, last year their patch was, let's go get Pat Beverly. And that obviously didn't work. This year it's Gary Trent. You're asking a whole lot of Gary Trent, and he's going to have to continue to do it. And you're talking about like whether or not this thing can steamroll. All right. So they're 1-2, right? 2-5 or 1-6 is on the table. They're at the Celtics tonight. That's not great. Then they've got
God, they're going to get destroyed.
Then they've got the Grizzlies, and then they've got a home and home against the Cavs, who have looked really good. Those are tough games, Bill. They could lose all of those. If they get one, it's still only 2-5. And now all of a sudden, people are going, hey, what is going on with this team? They still haven't figured out the Dame Giannis pick and roll. The defense looks shaky. They look old. They're not deep. There's no real way to fix it because they've kind of backed themselves into a quarter in terms of team building and like how much money that they have because they don't have a lot to throw around. And now it's like, okay, you can't really like do much via trade. You're kind of locked in this team. And also, as you mentioned, you already changed the head coach, right? So what's the fix here?
They're not that different in terms of their difficulties in making kind of moves if they need to than, say, the Suns, right? I mean, it's just, I think we all thought the Suns were going to be a disaster and Milwaukee was going to be, worst case scenario, serviceably 3rd or 4th and maybe overmatched by teams like Boston. But if they're not good, there's no way to fix it. And I know that sometimes repeating points feels it's redundant, but it doesn't change the fact that Drew Holiday going away, of all the problems, right? Of all the things that are for me, it's Doc. And
that's what started everything.
Yeah, Giannis' wanderlust and his Dame really a good fit, his Dame a little old. They're going to play a Celtics team that has maybe the guy that was the secret to the alchemy behind Milwaukee's championship. And that can't ring that bell.
Tell me if I'm crazy here, but when you look at a team that needs more consistency offensively.
Okay, here we go.
That needs perimeter defense.
Yeah, it would help.
Okay, and now they're going to go and play the Boston Celtics, who have a guy named Drew Holiday. Wouldn't a guy like Drew Holiday kind of be the perfect fit for the Milwaukee Bucks? And like I know that hindsight is 2020, but like looking back on it, that whole thing created this snowball, and it just and they blew it up. And if they could undo that, they'd be in such better shape for so many different reasons.
I was trying to think this morning as we were getting ready for the show about championship teams that panicked, right, on a level like this, where Milwaukee wins a championship and then they don't win another one right away, and it's just like, oh my God, we gotta freak out, we gotta change everything. And the only team that I could think of, and it's different because they were older, is the Dallas Mavericks team that beat the Heat in 2011, where if you remember, they won, and then basically Mark Cuban kind of dismantled it to sort of create cap space for LeBron James, who never showed up. Maybe the Lakers after the bubble, which is something that producer Aaron's pointing out. But yeah, this is, and I like their GM. I like John Horst as the GM. They were a championship level team. The pieces were still there. Drew Holiday obviously was that piece, and they They swapped him out for Damian Lillard and all this sort of other things that are going on, and they changed coaches multiple times. This is self-inflicted.
Drew Holiday is both cheaper and more versatile than Dame. Dame is an awesome player, but Dame, so far, I mean, look, who knows what they're going to get out of him, but in terms of how they wanted to play, Drew Holiday is a better fit, and also was the second best player on the team that actually won the championship. And they went, you know what? We're going to have to unplug him. And then
it's crazy.
They could not have known the ripple effect would be him getting rerouted to Boston. But that is just insult to injury, kicking them while they're down, where all of a sudden, not only do you make one of your primary competitors in the Eastern Conference better, but you're doing it with the guy who used to play for you. I mean, it's just absolutely brutal. I think, Bill, this was one of the teams that I was down on, the Bucks. I think I had them 6 when we did our preview. And I was saying, if it doesn't go well for them, that this could be a detonation thing. If it doesn't go well for them, this could be a detonation thing. I mean, like you might have to.
Yeah, look, it's early. Your predictions are looking your predictions are looking pretty solid so far.
I also had the Rockets.
So, it's early though.
Rockets
That's early.
They're making me a little nervous.
I had them high too. You sold me on the Rockets.
Against your San Antonio Spurs the other night. I don't know if you watched that game. Spurs were up 22 points. We're getting off on a little tangent here. I'm going to do it anyway. They were up 22, and then the Rockets decided to just like sit a lot of their guys except for Jalen Green. And Jalen Green and Cam Whitmore and Tari Eason like almost single-handedly got them back into that game and won the game with Alperen Şengün and Amin Thompson sitting on the bench and watching the whole thing. And I'm like, man, Ime is really in his bag tonight, but they didn't pull that off. Let's talk about the Warriors too before we wrap this thing up. So first, Steph Curry. Can he get an ankle transplant? Is that possible? He rolled his ankle last night. He comes back. He rolled his ankle to start, right? And I was like, oh, that doesn't look good. But he's like on the bench and he's like working it out with like a band or whatever. And he's rolling it around and then he checks back into the game. And I'm like, okay, good. He's fine. And then Bill, I don't know if you saw the play that like did it. He was basically he took a step. He basically was just like walking into a screen to set a screen. He wasn't running hard. It wasn't a play where he landed on somebody's foot. There was nothing athletic about this. He took a step, his ankle folded over, and then he just like hobbled off the court into the back. It was
like Back to the Future. Yeah. No, it was. So let me ask you a question. I was thinking about this. Let me ask you a question. I'm not willing this, and he's getting an MRI, and we all love Steph. If Steph is not available to the Warriors, they are the worst team in the NBA.
Well, I mean, to hear Steve Kerr say it, they're going to be fine because they've got so much depth.
A rotation of 15 guys,
which I want to talk about in a second.
I know you do.
What are they?
I don't think they're.
They're not a play-in team.
No, they're Utah, dude. They're the Utah Jazz. They're that level. I think they're that.
Yeah. I mean, like maybe slightly better, but yeah. I mean, Utah has some useful players, but won't be a play-in team either. But this is a killer because, number one, just from like an entertainment standpoint, you want Steph out there, right? I mean, he's one of the most fun players to watch in the NBA, but it's also a bummer because he's had so many ankle issues previously. I know that this is a stupid thing. Maybe this is something for you to ask next time you're out at a game or whatever, but like football players always tape their ankles. Why don't NBA players tape their ankles? What is that?
I don't know. Mobility?
I don't know. And also, I know there was a study done a long time. So back in the day when you and I were growing up, everybody wore high tops because the idea was, it gives you more ankle support. And then there was like various studies done that saying that like there's no real truth to
maybe
that.
Maybe they do, and we just can't see them because I mean they got maybe I don't know. I'll ask.
I don't know either, but I always thought like growing up, hey, you're gonna have your high tops on and lace them up real tight and whatever. But there's been studies done that says that doesn't provide you with any more ankle support than low tops, which is like why a lot of players now
I don't believe those
wear low tops and they
I use high tops for my players.
You're just as likely to roll your ankle in a low top as you are in a high top. Steph did wear special ankle braces for years, as producer Aaron points out. I would like him to put those back on.
Look, this is something I feel like we've talked about with Steph Curry every 2 years since he came into the league. I mean, it's a nonstop. And we're also coming off one of the most iconic moments in his career, right? In the Olympics. I mean, just a reminder that whatever the sort of team, and I know you want to talk about the depth and the sort of, they're interesting how they're constructed. And producer Aaron's a Warriors fan. Hates Steve Kerr. I'm not sure I trust Steve Kerr to manage his rotations properly, but if you can get something, obviously Steph is capable of magic, moments of real magic. And that makes the Warriors, you're right, entertaining and fun. And I think to a degree, more dangerous than we often think about because we take for granted when he's out there how good Steph is.
How dynamic he is.
Yeah.
So Steve Kerr was asked about it after the game last night, and he said, I think we can survive a few games without Steph because of our depth. I want to bring this up because Steve Kerr has lately developed into the anti-Tibbs. If Tibbs only wants to play 5, Steve Kerr will play everybody on his team. And then
guys in stands,
he'll grab guys out of the bench. There's support guys, a guy with a mop who wipes up the sweaty spot. He gets to play. Bill, his rotation against the Clippers, he went 12 deep. Against the Jazz, he played 14 guys. Against the Blazers in the opener, 14 guys. Explain to me how this makes sense and if it's sustainable. It's obviously not sustainable, right? He's got to tighten the rotation eventually.
So there's a couple theories, right? One theory, the Aaron Larsulis theory, is that Steve Kerr is trash and doesn't know what he's doing. I don't really subscribe to that theory.
I don't either. This is ridiculous.
But there's a lot of people who think that.
Which is
there's
crazy.
A lot of Warriors fans. I know.
It's wild. It doesn't make any sense to me.
The other theory is that basically there's a big drop off after Steph. Although Wiggins has played really well, which is his own weird kind of because he's basically become a shell of himself the last 2 seasons, and maybe he'll return to that. But maybe the idea being Kerr just doesn't know 2 to 15 or 3 to 15 sort of who he has and what he has, and he's just trying to figure it out early on. Like it's the opposite of the Aaron Larsulis theory that he's trash, that Steve Kerr is really good at what he does, but he doesn't have the answers yet, and he's trying to figure it out. And I guess the other thing would be just like they're just this deep, and he's making the right decision, just right playing a bunch of guys.
I mean, so I'm looking at the line from last night, right? So he goes with Draymond, Kuminga, Trace Jackson, Davis, Wiggins, and Curry to start, right? And then you go, okay,
he'll be okay.
Yeah, and then you go, okay, if you're going to play 12 guys, like probably some of them didn't play that much, right? Well, slow-mo, Kyle Anderson only played 4 minutes, and then Waters played 1 minute. Everybody else, though, played off the bench. Looney played 28 minutes. Buddy Hield, by the way,
I love Buddy Hield.
14 minutes. Buddy Hield has been pretty good for them.
He was so bad.
Although last night,
so bad in that game. He was 1 for 9 or 1 for 10 from 3, right?
1 for 9, yeah. But the previous 2 games, he had looked pretty good. Gary Payton, a second, 14 minutes. D'Anthony Melton, 17 minutes. Moody, 12 minutes. Pajemski, 25 minutes. His bench unit is getting serious. I don't even know. How do you even get that many minutes? Has anybody checked this? Does this add up?
So, I mean, this sounds like the old Spurs teams back when they actually won their last championship. They played the last Spurs team to win a championship. I think it was Tony Parker played the most minutes on the team. It was like 29 per game. So it has to be all those guys are playing in the 20s because that's what for different reasons. That's what Pop did, where his starters played in the 20s, and then he had a bunch of guys who played in the like upper mid-teens and the low 20s. That's the math, right? Guys can't play mid-30s.
What if Steve Kerr has stumbled onto some sort of like hockey shift genius rotation?
Line change.
Amazing. He's just shuffling guys in. Well, you know what? This is they were built to sustain Steph Curry being out for a couple games because of his rolled ankle, exactly like this. So Steve Kerr is going to get into his bag. I'm excited for some of these games tonight. We got a whole bunch going on. We got a whole week of shows coming up for you guys. We're back to doing 5 days a week. I want to remind everybody that we are live on YouTube at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. So we thank everybody who's joining us on YouTube right now. You can hit the like button, leave us a comment, please subscribe, join us again tomorrow. For those of you who are listening to us on a podcast, you can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. We're going to be doing this 5 days a week now that the NBA is back rolling. Tomorrow, Bill and I are going to be back, and it's
John will drop F-bombs.
I pushed it back in. I caught it. And
I don't think you did.
It was like halfway out. But tomorrow, because it's 1 week. Tomorrow, the NBA has been back for exactly 1 week. we are going to do something. We're going to have a little show where we overreact our 1 week overreactions. We're going to get a little crazy. So that should be fun. So come and join us for that. And you can get into the chat and give us your overreactions as well. But for now, this is a good place to stop on a Monday for our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. I am John Gonzalez. As I mentioned, back at it tomorrow, gang. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening. We'll see you on Tuesday.